All right, and then I'm gonna hit record. And
Recording in
all set to
progress.
go.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today is the April 21st meeting of the Finance Committee. And seeing that we have a quorum of members here, I'm going to first call on everyone to make sure we can hear and you can hear us. And I'll just call you out on the order I see you on my screen. Lynn Griesmer,
Present.
Anna,
Present.
Tom Porter,
Present.
Sam,
Present.
Kathleen.
Present, and I'm having an issue with my camera, but I will try to fix it.
That's all right. You're permanently in front of the fall foliage, so it's very pretty. Jill emailed me she won't be able to join us today, and Joe won't. So we aren't expecting any other members. We have a fairly full agenda today. I am going to open it up first to public comments, but I want to say one thing that's on the agenda. I had said I would get you a draft report. I have a draft report, but I decided since there were so many sections missing from it, that I wouldn't put it to you now to sit and go through it as a committee. But I will have a draft by the end of the day today when we get through with this meeting, and that'll give time to get everybody's comments in it and make changes. So that's one less item on the agenda. I'm going to open it up first to public comments, but then we have the third quarter report. Sean would blanch at the thought we'd already have fourth quarter. We're continued discussion on Community Preservation Act on one project, the Jones Library project. And we have another financial order referred to us, the Amherst Pelham Regional School borrowing order for $497,000. That's for debt. And if we want to continue discussions about superintendent and school library, Lynn can tell us what has already been submitted on schools, and then really just review the calendar for May. And I can tell you everyone who signed up for which budget issues, and I put a whole calendar out to everyone. So I think what we'll do first, if everyone's okay with that, I'm opening it up for public comments. And I see, Sean, I think you're host and you haven't made me co-host. Good. Kent, we've brought you into the meeting.
Thank you very much, Kathy. I'm Kent Ferber, a resident of Amherst in District 5B. And in considering the Jones Library grant, I just hope the Finance Committee can help the Town Council focus clearly on its very specific responsibility to advance the purposes of the Community Preservation Act. The goal of the Community Preservation Act is to encourage certain activity, including historic preservation, by helping to pay for it. So the only issue before the Town Council now is whether the CPA Committee's slate of recommendations is the most effective way to achieve that goal. Does funding the preservation of the historic woodwork at the library advance the purposes of the Act, or as well as any of the other projects applied for? That's the only issue. This is not another referendum on what kind of a library the town should have. The Town Council does not advance the goals of the Community Preservation Act by denying this grant because the larger library project should never have been undertaken, or because the prior CPA grant for the larger library project should have been counted towards the town's funding share, or because the larger project should have included more historic preservation, or because the larger project has received, quote, enough tax dollars, close quote. However disappointed one might be on these issues, voting for those reasons is not good government. Denying support for this preservation work because the work will be done anyway and the library can pay for it out of its endowment also does not fulfill the council's responsibility under the Act. The roof on Town Hall will be replaced whether the grant for it is approved or not. And the town has a large budget. Why shouldn't it pay the entire cost? No one believes, including us, that that grant should be rejected. Denying this grant because the money should be saved for some imaginary application in the future, which will better fulfill the purposes of the Act, discourages historic preservation planning instead of encouraging it. It is difficult to imagine a project that more effectively advances the historic preservation purposes of the Act than the restoration of this woodwork. The claims that this project is not eligible are simply unfounded proxies for these irrelevant considerations. You will hear later the legal opinion of the town's lawyers, particularly as it addresses the unique terms of the bond authorization, which precisely anticipated a grant like this, should be authoritative over a hardly independent legal brief commissioned and paid for by Jeff Lee's Amherst Community Preservation Coalition, which, as far as anyone can tell, was formed only to oppose the library project. And the overwhelming custom, supported by the opinion of the experts, is that as the law explicitly states, only, quote, the CPA-funded project, close quote, must comply with the National Park Service standards, not the entire project. The prodigious work of the CPA committee, with a level of effort that couldn't be duplicated by the town council, made a finely tuned judgment comparing how all the applications this year advanced the purposes of the Act. Except for the most clear and compelling reasons, that work should be respected if the council wants future committees to do the same level of work. Yes, this woodwork will be preserved whether the council votes this grant or not, but it did not have to do so. The larger library project would have cost much less without its historic preservation work. The trustees are undertaking the preservation of this woodwork in response to the overwhelming, loudly and consistently voiced wishes of Amherst voters that it do so. Why is the town council hesitating to do likewise? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Kent. Are there any other members of the public wishing to speak? I don't see any other hands, so I'm going to close the public comment period. So the first, the way we've listed it, the first order on the agenda is the third quarter report. And can you put Kent back in the audience, Sean?
Yes, let me do that.
I would do it, except I don't have the power.
I think he's
I got it.
removed. Well, I think he's already back in the audience, isn't he? Do you still
Okay.
see him?
Yep, I got it.
Okay. Do you want me to share my screen, Kathy?
Yeah, that would be great.
All right. Can everyone see this? And is it legible? Make it a little
I'm
bigger.
going to answer yes for Kathy,
Okay.
but I'll wait to make sure others can see it.
All right. Well,
I
if
can
anyone...
see it. All good.
Excellent. All right, so this is the third quarter budget report. So this is through March 31st, so the first 3 quarters of our fiscal year. A lot of things are on track. There's one key thing that's not on track that we'll talk about at the end with one of our enterprise funds, but we will start with the general fund. So I'm not going to read all these words, but if there's any questions about anything, we can come back at the end. But on the revenue side, so we're going to start with general fund revenues. We've collected about 75.4% of our budgeted revenues in the general fund. This is compared to last year where we had collected about 80.8% through this point in time. So there's different timing things that can impact it. So there's not necessarily a reason for concern. The only thing I would take away from this is that our year-end surplus, and I think we expect it to be smaller than last year, especially in like the interest income. Interest income still doing well, but it's nowhere near where it was tracking last year at this time, which makes sense because we're starting to spend that money. A lot of that money that was generating some of that interest is being spent. So some other things on the revenue side are, you'll see in the report, we'll get there in a second, the motor vehicle excise tax collection rate's a little low. I checked with our collector's office. Bills went out a little bit later this year, a couple weeks later. They go out in February, and because of that, we think that's what's driving the collection rate down a little bit. We're not worried about hitting our benchmark for motor vehicle excise tax, but that could also impact the lower collection rate through 3 months. And I'm sad Jill's not here because I did put into this quarterly report what she asked for, and I wanted feedback to see if is, hitting what she asked for. But Councilor Breivik at the last quarterly report asked about having sort of a key on the revenue side in particular to explain what is in the different revenue categories. And so that's what that table is. And it's not perfect. I've already found some things I want to clarify or tweak, but let me know when you look at that if there's things that are unclear. On the expenditure side, we have spent 71.5% of the budget through this point in the year. There's always, again, timing even on the payroll side, especially in the schools. So if you look at the school spending, they're always going to be a little bit lower than 75% because they pay out summer pays to staff. So they're not only the staff that elect it, but a good number of teachers and paras elect to get their pay spread out over the summer. So those 4 pays in the summer all hit in June. So the schools are always a little bit lower than that 75% benchmark, and they're a big part of our budget. The other big thing to be aware of is that we do still have 2 unsettled collective bargaining agreements with the DPW unions. If and when those get settled, hopefully when they get settled, there will be a retro payment, or there could be a retro payment associated with those, and we do have a reserve for that. But right now, that's not showing up as spent. It's showing up, it's an available budget. So that could swing it, a decent amount once that contract's settled and that retro payment is made. Another area on the expense side to be aware of that's trending in the wrong direction is snow and ice. So we had a really snowy year, a lot of plowing, a lot of material put down on the roads. So snow and ice is well over budget. That's the one area of the budget where we are allowed to have a legal deficit at year end. We don't want to have a deficit, meaning we want to be able to cover that with our existing appropriations if at all possible. Because we don't want to take it out of next year's tax rate, because that would then reduce the resources for next year. So we are anticipating that we will be able to cover that deficit this year with savings in other areas of the budget. But I did want to just highlight that because you'll see in the report that that's quite a bit over budget. However, it should be done at this point, and there might be a little bit, we encumber a lot of the materials at the start of the year, so the expenses might come down a little bit once all those encumbrances are released. Debt is another area where you'll see a significant amount available, but we have a bunch of debt payments coming up in April and May and June. And so we expect to spend most of that debt budget, if not all of it. And then I'm going to shift to enter. Yeah, questions when they come up, Lynn?
Yeah, 2 of them. Can you go back up to the statement about pilot?
Sure. Pilot, you mean revenue?
Yes. The majority of these revenues are received as transfers from enterprise funds.
Yeah, so we forever have had the enterprise funds. Basically, it's been a flat amount forever. It doesn't change, or it hasn't changed in a long time. It represents the value of the property they own. So that's always been a payment to the general fund as a revenue source.
So, for example, our enterprise funds for
Water,
sewer,
sewer, parking.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
It's
this
not,
has
it's not
nothing to
not
do
a
with state
pilot.
revenue.
No, not that pilot.
Okay.
This is this one in particular. We do have, so our pilots that are on the revenue side, outside of the state are this, which again it's more or less an agreement with, internal agreement with the enterprise funds to reimburse the town for the property they own.
Mhm.
And then we do have a couple small pilots with solar developers. So a lot of the
Mhm.
solar arrays that come in, we have pilots for those as well.
Okay. My other question is there any discussion at the state level of providing cities and towns with additional money for snow plowing?
Yes, there is. They had a webinar. They've collected some data. I haven't heard that it's been approved, but I believe there is a proposal and some money that's been proposed to offset some of that. And Amy Rusecki from Public Works has been working, as the kind of liaison for the town. Kathleen?
Yeah, just as a follow-on to Lynn's question, when will the Hickory Ridge Solar pilot hit the books, and how is that number determined? How is that agreement?
Yeah. So that number was agreed. The pilot itself should start hitting the books this year. They just got their license to operate or their certificate to operate. It's been several years, but my understanding is they just got that. So we should start receiving that payment. I believe either we'll get it in FY26, or if not FY26, we'll definitely have it for FY27. How the amount was determined, it was through discussions with the developers, with the assessor's office, going back. I don't know, that agreement's been around for 4 or 5 years, I think. And so they look at the value of the equipment that's on the land. There were, that was part of a purchase agreement as well, right? When we purchased that land, I believe the solar was already part of that process. I don't, Dave Zomack would be the best one to speak to all the details of that, but the amount was agreed to 4 or 5 years ago. Tom?
Hi, Sean. Thanks again. Just again on pilot, and forgive me if this is off base or maybe something that's been washed out and settled long ago. When we talk about pilot relating to the schools and their property, in my memory, we always talk about UMass and Amherst College, and I don't recall a conversation about Hampshire, but I'm just raising the question of whether there's any impact this year from to the town in terms of as either a creditor or a partner in any sense, maybe under pilot, with the recent developments at Hampshire College. Is that something that you are concerned about in terms of the accountings?
Right. So what we have with UMass and Amherst College are strategic partnership agreements. So just want to, sometimes they can be perceived as pilots, but they're in some way specifically not pilots. With Hampshire College, we don't have a financial arrangement that that at least is coming to mind, where we do think there could be some financial impacts. One is water and sewer. So they are reasonable, one of our larger customers in the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund. So if the consumption winds down and therefore they're not paying for water and sewer, that'll kind of put more pressure on the rest of the system. Our water and sewer, you think, oh, well, if they're consuming less water, your cost should come down. But really the costs of the water system are based on our water sources and the number of water sources we maintain and the staffing that is required to maintain those water sources. The only time we can really make sort of volume-based reductions to our water and sewer is if we were to take a water source offline. And in fact, we just added a water source back online with Centennial. So we don't expect it to have a large reduction in our cost side, but it could and it will likely reduce the revenues that we collect. So we're going to be presenting water and sewer rates, I think that maybe as early as next week, potentially following meeting, and we'll talk about the impact of Hampshire College and the consumption that won't be there. They do have a few taxable properties that won't directly impact the town because our levy is our levy. But if they're not paying the taxes, somebody else will be potentially, unless it whatever happens with their properties. But the main area that we're looking at is water and sewer.
I appreciate knowing that. Thank you, Sean.
Yep. Lynn?
Just very quickly on the payment in lieu of taxes for the solar on Hickory Ridge, is there an escalation or a depreciation factor?
This particular one is a flat, I believe it's a flat rate. Sometimes they do escalate, sometimes they look out, over the length of the pilot, and then they kind of find an average number and keep it a flat number throughout. And I believe this one is a flat number.
Thank you.
Just so a lot of those pilots come through the property tax revenue line. They just have a pilot that establishes the amount that they pay. Kathy?
Yeah, I'm focused just on revenues first, but I also have a couple expense questions. Where in revenues is it debt? Do you show the debt exclusion for the school?
It's it's in part of property tax revenue. So the property
So
tax number.
it just sits, it sits there, you're not separating it out.
No.
Because there's a debt other department revenue, but it's not there, so it's just
No, it's
in,
property tax revenue. Yeah.
okay. So that was that, and it looks like, as in the several years in a row, our investment income is continuing to run well above what we budgeted. Are we, and I understand where that's coming from, is the base on which that investment income, so just so everyone knows, because I only learned this a few years ago, that's investment earnings on capital that's not otherwise in our reserve funds.
Right.
So is that base declining, as we're some of the delayed projects are now getting funded, or is that, or are we starting to see a number that we would expect to see next year?
Yeah, I don't. So I don't know if our base is declining. I'd have to look at that closer. Our rates are declining. So we were getting 4% plus on CDs. We're now in the 3% range on CDs. So we are starting to see those very, very short term interest rates start to come down. And again, you know, until we see where the economy goes and where things
Yep,
stabilize at, the budget we've set for interest is really what we feel confident if
sure.
that will have going forward. Again, you go back 3 or 4 years, and we were only bringing in $100,000 or $200,000 a year in investment income. So we're not far removed from a reality where interest rates were super low. We've heard or I've heard, our president would like interest rates low. That's good for borrowing, but it's bad for savings. And so if we were to go back to where we were, 5 or 6 years ago, super low interest rates on bands, then, we would even be below the 500,000 that's budgeted for investment income right now. So again, we're taking a very cautious approach with investment income in particular, because it can change so quickly, and it's more or less outside of our control in terms of rates. And the only thing we control is how much money we have on hand, and we know it's a little bit elevated right now because of the capital projects. But that'll, we're, the school project will be mostly spent out by September, with some amount being reserved for the retainage until the project is completely closed out. So there's going to be a retainage amount that'll come out later. The library project is supposed to be completed around February or March of 2027, so within a year as well. And that one also will have a retainage that will hang on for a little bit. So we do expect that going from this point forward, our funds will start to be spent down, and that number will shrink.
Okay, so I just have two more, Sam, and this is on the revenue side. Uh, on regional debt assessments, do we just pay our share quarterly? Is that why they're
Yep.
still?
Yeah, it's like an exact quarter. Yep. So it
Okay,
should be exactly 75%.
and then tuition assessments are running at 65%. Did they come in lower than originally, or is there a balloon at the end of the year?
I believe they're trending lower. So that's the
That's mainly,
charter reimbursement.
yeah, that's chart.
Yeah. So Shannon, and I gotta circle back to her. She's been having trouble getting the data from the state that gives like the specific breakdown of how many students are in charter schools, and the breakdown of individual tuition cost. But we do think typically the number that gets estimated for charter reimbursement is usually high at the beginning of the year, and then it comes in lower as we go, because they, at least historically, we've seen very high initial estimates for charter reimbursement.
And I have no idea, I'd asked this once, but if at the beginning of year, there's a certain number of people in the charter, but then they end up coming back to Amherst, it gets prorated. So I don't know when the state
Yep.
does the estimate, what number they're looking at. And just, is that also including the tuition out for our choice out? Does that line include both charter tuition?
So this includes choice tuition, charter tuition, and then the other big one
Vocational?
is our transit assessment.
Okay,
Now, vocational is paid directly. That goes
Okay.
directly from the school district to the vocational school. No, the vast majority of the state aid assessments is charter, choice, and the transit assessment. And Kathy, what I can do is I can give you there's some reports that you can on the state website, DLS website, that show, you can kind of see where they start to adjust the monthly. We get basically monthly bills from the state, and you can see where they get an updated charter
Okay.
roster, and then they readjust how much they're charging you for the rest of the year. So
Yeah, and that's, just so everyone knows, this is on the expense side, and it's about the third to the fourth to the bottom. And I was just, it would be good news if that number was going down, is the reason I saw it at 65% rather than 75. And
yeah, but if the thing to keep in mind is if the expense is down, that will likely mean the revenue will be down as well, especially with charter tuition, because the charter tuition reimbursement number, so
Yep.
is so if you see tuition assessments at 65, but on the revenue side, we are also at
Okay,
66. So the charter tuition reimbursement is directly related to our charter tuition costs. So if they are going up by less, then our reimbursement will be less as well.
okay. Thank you. That ends the things I'd flagged.
Sam,
Sam, you're muted.
Thank you, Sean.
you're still
You,
muted.
you muted yourself again.
I know some people that would like to be able to do that to me elsewhere. I noticed in here, and it's not major, just the meals tax collections being down, and I'm curious if that's a reporting cycle or if it's
Yeah, that's a
generally
reporting thing. We're actually we think it's doing okay. There's only 2 quarters. I think it does it say that? I thought I wrote that. It's only 2 quarters and there's 4 quarters, so it's actually doing it's on track. Yeah,
Yeah,
so it only reflects the first and second quarter distributions. And so sorry for scrolling so much.
okay.
So if you look at where it's at with only the first and second quarter distributions, the meals tax is at 63%. So it's over 50%, and the summer quarter will be a big one. And then hotel and motel with only 2 quarters is at 92%. So we expect they'll both hit their target.
Well, that's good because it's just a data point of activity in town, which is nice to see it.
Yeah. And those are also 2 areas where for FY27 we've increased the estimates for the budget to reflect that they're coming in higher.
Sure. When you were speaking about the investment income and the interest rates, a thought popped into my head. And am I correct that our debt is all fixed, that there's no variable
No,
implications?
yeah, we don't take variable debt yet.
Okay. Are there, separate from that, were there to be some form of surge in interest rates? Where might that impact us, if anywhere?
The
OPED or anything along
the
those lines?
DPW project, I think, would be,
Okay.
as we prepare for borrowing and our estimates for that project, if there were a surge in interest rates, that's where it would likely have a negative impact. The other thing with our debt is it is callable after so many years too, so we can refinance, and we've done that. We haven't had a lot of debt for a long time, but we have done that in the last 5 or 6 years. We've refinanced and saved, lots of money through refinancing. So that'll be definitely a topic of discussion in about 8 or 9 years, whether, to see what interest rates are at that time.
I haven't looked at it in a while, our OPED payments, retirement pension and whatnot, are they tied in any way to long-term rates?
They are tied to the stock market primarily. So more are retirement funds. So our retirement pension funds, they are all with Hampshire County, and Hampshire County invests, over 90% of the funds with PRIM, which is the Pension Reserve Investment Group at the state. And so they invest for long term, so they're invested in the market. And so they've been doing really well. We are kind of holding our breath that at some point there's going to be a pullback, and that could, the Hampshire County retirement system has about $600 million in assets. And Amherst is the biggest member of that system between the region and the town. So it's been doing really, really well. But we are kind of holding our breath that there's going to be a pullback. So the market itself, the stock market, will impact how well funded our system is. Right now we're at about 80% funded, and so if the stock market drops, it could drop us to 75% funded, but it'll do that to everybody. All the retirement systems are sort of in that boat.
Thank you.
Kathleen?
Yeah, ahead of the meeting, I had a question about on the expenses,
Yep.
why some of the budget numbers for the municipal departments are higher than they were in the budget book, and I'm not sure I completely understood your explanation, so I was hoping you could just explain that a little bit, like why have those adjustments been made since the time of the budget being approved?
Yeah, so the department budget shouldn't be different. So if there's something there, we can talk. What is different? So if you look at the total general fund number, it's 101, 822, 279. The number that the council sees when they vote the budget is 10, it was 103 something. And the reason there's a difference there is there's a few things that for the budgetary vote, they're shown on the expense side, but they don't actually get into our Munis system for one reason or another. And there's three specific things. One are what we call cherry sheet offsets. So that is the school choice money in and the um, library money that we get in. So on our budget, when we present it to you, we show it as a revenue and an expense, and they wash with each other. You may remember that. Um, we show them there so you can see how much money is coming in, but that money goes directly, it gets posted directly to the schools and it gets posted directly to the library. It doesn't ever actually come into the general fund. And that's about $1 million between the library, the MBLC that the library gets, and the school choice tuition money that goes into the school department, school choice revolving fund. So that's the biggest piece. The other piece is our overlay. So you may remember on the revenue side, we project our property taxes, and then we always have an estimate for allowances, exemptions, abatements, and allowance for that on the property tax side. And so on the expense side, we show it as a outgoing resource, but in reality, it's actually like a contra revenue. It offsets our revenue because it's assuming we're not going to collect a certain amount, and it puts aside into a fund. So that again doesn't come into it's not actually an expense in Munis, and it never has been. And then there was one other one. Let me see.
But,
Do you have the
Yeah,
other one, Kathy? I said
but,
there was one other reason.
but Kathleen, why don't you give an example of the department that you're
Yeah,
seeing where you can't
so
match?
actually, it's actually most of them. Like it's a slightly different number where, hold on, let me see if
oh, sorry. So you may see the total hasn't changed. Where you might see subtle differences is we had a collective bargaining agreements that were not settled when we started the year, and we budgeted them in a central location. And then we have basically, since some of those contracts have been settled, we have transferred those funds into those departments where the collective bargaining agreement, for the employees related to that collective bargaining agreement. So that's where
okay.
you might see small, depending on the
Yeah.
department,
And it
small to medium size adjustments because of that, because we had unsettled contracts this year.
Yeah, and that makes sense because it's like between 1% and 2%, and it's a lot
Yeah,
of the departments, but for example, it's not fire EMS because I think
they
theirs
were
was
they were
already.
settled. They were
Yeah.
settled to start the year. Yeah.
And then the other question related to that is that the employee benefits total had actually decreased from the budget
Yes.
book, and so I just wanted to just check
And
about that one.
that's where we budget the reserve for
Okay.
the negotiation. So you'll see that line go down and the other lines go up.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you.
No, that's a
And,
good question.
and Sean, I know we never show those. If you look in the budget book, you just see, by the way, it has the following things in it and the reserve.
Mhm.
So Kathleen, we never see that extra line and broken out, on how much is sitting there.
Right.
So that's where I've been wondering, so what happens, Sean, is my understanding is you're drawing that down and then it goes out to specific departments. So by the end of the year, the employee
Yeah.
benefit line is specific employee benefits,
Yeah,
except for,
it should be left with just employee benefits. And so next year, let's say that the public works contracts are settled, sometime before the end of this fiscal year. Um, that reserve won't exist for next year. So what we just discussed won't impact FY27 because all the contracts will be settled in FY27 if we settle these two contracts.
And then can I just ask quickly if so in the FY27 budget book, these will be the numbers that we see for all the departments for FY26 versus the ones that appeared in the budget book when we saw it last?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
You know, the other thing, Kathleen, that you'll see we're not getting the detail here, but the other thing that happens in the budget book is the part of a department that's not payroll, but it's expenses, that gets updated to what the actual expenses were. You know, whatever we said was budgeted, so compared to the FY 26 budget book. So we'll see that in FY 27.
All right. So one other. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sam. I just want to make sure I get to the bad
Oh.
news. So,
Okay. When you were first talking, thank you, Sean, you mentioned the snow and ice was the one area where we can legally exceed.
mhm.
Driving in today, it popped into my head, what, if anywhere, and it may not be relevant to this particular discussion, suppose there's a bad year for roads and potholes, which I've certainly been hearing about from a lot of folks. If that exceeds does that have anything to do with what we're looking at here? I mean, how would that be?
Yeah.
If
So
more funding was needed, would it just be moved from the roads and transportations into the maintenance aspect of it? I'm curious, because,
yeah. So they have to operate within Public Works has to operate within their budgets. We do, look at all their budgets sort of as a whole on the operating expense side. So like if they had savings and equipment maintenance, we would work with them if they needed more money to fill potholes. But they do have to, live within their whatever was adopted for their budget, or we have to identify other funding that's available in the operating budget that could be used to shift essentially.
so if it's apt to get exceeded, it would require some form of town council
Yeah.
transfer? Is
A
that what
lot
I'm
and a lot of that
hearing?
pothole funding doesn't come out of the operating budget. It comes from
The
the
capital.
the capital money. So there's a fixed limit there that they have to stick within.
That's what I was gonna say, Sam, it can't go over, I mean, there's a fixed amount, between town and other. So we would just have deteriorating roads unless we could,
Uh,
unless we could go back and appropriate money from someplace else. It's not budgeted in the same way. There's an allowance for it.
Yeah, I was distinguishing between um, the, road replacement plan, of course,
Yeah.
and
There is a small amount
the,
of money in the operating budget for potholes, and if you ask Guilford, much too small. So there is a little bit of money there, and then when they've exhausted that, they would, as Kathy mentioned, it would be capital funds for road improvements
so it would be a council action on capital
to put
to,
more money. Yeah.
uh, okay. Some
Kathleen,
food for thought.
Sorry,
Kathleen,
I just have one more question. So can you just say in the recreation revenues, how do those relate to the revenues listed in for the recreation revolving fund? Because it seems like the recreation revolving fund revenues are like considerably higher than what's on the quarterly report for the budget. So I just wondered if those are different in some way, or if you could just clarify that.
Yeah. So, and it isn't, it is, like this is just how things have lined up in the past. Doesn't mean they have to line up this way forever, but this is how they've lined up in the past. So there are 3 recreation revolving funds. There is the aquatics one that you guys just created, I think last year. The aquatics revolving fund receives all the indoor pool revenue. Okay. Indoor pool revenue. And it pays for pool expenses. There is an after school revolving fund, which is for the program at Crocker Farm, prime time, I think. And that receives all the tuition payments for students attending that after school program. And then there is the general recreation revolving fund, which has a lot of different programs and a lot of different revenue sources, whether it's summer camp revenues or they do some adult leagues, they do some youth leagues. There's actually in the budget document, I don't know if you've seen it, there's a page in the budget document under special revenues that gives a more detailed breakout of the revenue sources that go into that revolving fund.
Yeah.
And I can highlight it this year when we talk about the FY27 budget. But that gives you a breakout of those revenues. The revenues that go into the general fund are Cherry Hill. So we get the Cherry Hill revenues. Outdoor pools, for whatever reason that delineation has been there, we get the outdoor pool revenue. And then there are administrative reimbursements from the other revolving funds that come back to the general fund as a reimbursement, almost like an indirect cost. So there's an admin fee paid back to the general fund from the general recreation revolving fund, and there's an admin fee paid back from the after school revolving fund. And there might be a few other little ones mixed in there, but those are the main ones. So yeah, Cherry Hill Department Golf Course, and then recreation. That 206 is a lot of pool revenues and admin. I don't know if the admin fees have actually hit yet. I'll have to double check.
Okay, yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you.
Yep. All right, so then we get to our enterprise fund. So the water and sewer fund are doing okay. This is the go back to the revenue side. This is the revenue side for water and sewer. So we're about 80% collected in the sewer fund. We're about 78% collected in the water fund. We are 78% in the solid waste fund. The problem is our transportation fund. So our transportation fund, it is not looking like we are going to hit our revenue target for this year. And so as a result, you will likely see a order coming to the council at some point to tap into retained earnings, and potentially for FY27 until we can sort of right size, determine if there's something we can do to fix the revenue issue, or do we have to adjust our expenses to balance out. When we look at it, there's a couple things that are lower than typical. Our meter revenue is changing. So once upon a time, most of the revenue for this fund came from the coin meters, right? Then we switched to kiosks, and then most of our revenue was through kiosks. And now we're switching to a place where it's on your phone and through an app. And so the dynamics of the usage revenue is just evolving, and our budget is still trying to catch up to where are we expecting to get the revenue. It's down a little bit, but that's not the area. I think there's some things we can do to work on that. We did lose a parking source. Don't tell Paul. But we did lose a parking lot, right? I know he's here somewhere, so he's probably bad. But the area where we're actually seeing revenues down the most, and I don't know, it's hard to tell if it's just an anomaly this year. We did meet with the parking team, is our violation revenue. So in some ways, if it's truly that we are seeing less violations of parking, that in itself is not a bad thing. It's bad for our finances, but it's not a bad thing for the town if our violation revenue is down because there's fewer violations. But our violation revenue is the area that's lagging significantly. And so, as I said, we met with our parking enforcement officers to try to understand, is there something going on that's leading to less parking violation revenue? We looked at each of the parking enforcement officers themselves to see, like, is there one, is one in particular lower than they were last year? We track it year over year, so we can kind of see how much what the violations are that are issued each month of each year. And it's sort of across the board down from last year. So it's not like one individual is not, writing as many tickets as another. So that's the area that's the revenue component of the transportation fund that's really driving this down, and that's the area that we're concerned about going forward. And again, we have to do something this year to make sure we at least cover our expenses, and then we have to think about next year as well. Kathy?
Sean, when you come, I don't need an answer now, but when you come with whatever you determine you might want to ask the council to look at, we increased the parking permits for downtown for anyone who didn't have an Amherst plate. And there was a little bit of concern that would mean and we increased it for everyone, but not as much. There was some concern that might decrease, even though it was a big hike, it might decrease it. So I'd be interested in knowing that. And Sean mentioned we lost one parking lot. That's the one in front of Town Hall. It used to generate about $60,000 in meter fees. But, you know, if there are places where a fee adjustment could be done, I think that resident permit is still the non-local parking. You know, they didn't register their car in Amherst. I think it's still well below what UMass charges for their parking lots. So that might be one place we look at when you come back and figure out what
Yeah,
we should do
parking
about.
permit revenues are doing well. I have to go back and when we made those changes and see what we had projected, but it is way up. I mean, that is one area that on the face of it, our permit revenues are high, much higher than they ever used to be. So again, I have to look and see what we projected it would
Okay.
be at this point to see is it really good, but they are up. And I
Okay.
think you're right. We need to talk with UMass about can we get the cars registered? That won't help this fund if they're registered here. That actually might hurt this fund, because if the way our system is if they register their vehicle in Amherst, the motor vehicle excise tax will go up because we'll start getting the motor vehicle excise tax, but they actually pay a reduced permit fee, right? We kind of set it up intentionally to get more students to register their vehicles in Amherst. So that would actually, the more that register in Amherst, potentially could reduce the permit revenues, if they're currently buying permits right now. And you're right, we can bring a breakdown of those revenue sources. We also, we want to look at, I don't think we've changed our usage rates in a while, unless you guys did in the last 2 years. And then the other thing that we need to look at, once upon a time when we set up the pay by phone, we agreed that we would split the credit card fee. There's a certain charge, I think it's 12 cents or something like that, for every transaction, and we decided we would split it. It might be as more and more shift to that, and that's the bulk of our revenue. We might have to reevaluate whether that's how the town wants to proceed, or do we just pass? Because that would reduce some expenses if we were not paying that transaction fee on the phones.
Thank you.
And I think that is it. Are there any other questions on the third quarter report?
I don't see any hands up, and I did notice that what you'd done in response to Jill, and I thought that was very useful, that she basically asked for a definition of what we're looking at and the various lines that weren't clear. So if anyone else, particularly people looking at this for the first time, continue to have what's in here. And the one other request last year, and I think this is more for maybe the fourth quarter report, Sean, was to break out some of the big departments by payroll and expenses so we can see the extent to which the expense line is going up. That came from Mandy.
Mhm.
And we noticed, both she and I noticed that Northampton does that. And we were trying to figure out whether that's difficult or easy for, try
Yeah.
not to give more work to your department. So I'm not suggesting you do that now, but just,
Okay. No, we can look at that.
okay.
All right. I will stop sharing.
So the next item on the agenda is the Jones Library project proposal that was listed as one of the CPAC projects. And Sean's task, among others that he's doing while in his busy life, was to get us more information. And I think you went to 3 sources, Sean: DOR, the CPAC Coalition, and the auditor, with a specific question about supplanting. And so we're waiting to hear from you.
Yeah. So I did talk to the 3 sources. The CPA Coalition was actually previously, but in response to that meeting, I did follow up with the Department of Revenue and our auditors. So I'll start with the CPA Coalition. So when I had reached out to Stuart Saginaw, who is the executive director of the CPA Coalition, we had some back and forth, and he ultimately said technically it fell into a gray area. In terms of the spirit of the law, he did not like it. I think he had some concerns with the whole thing about, this project's going to get done one way or the other, and using CPA funds for it. So I would put that as leaning negative, but not in terms of legally. It was more this, I think, his feeling about it. So that was the feedback I received from CPAC. After our meeting a couple weeks ago, I reached out to the Department of Revenue and Sean Cronin, who runs one of the divisions. He advised that I go to the Ask an Attorney webinar that they do several times a week. And I did that. And I spoke to someone who I've worked with before, Ken Woodland, who's the bureau chief of the municipal law division. And I explained, you know, the situation and kind of the different variables. And he said that they don't police CPA projects, so they're not going to give us a ruling on whether a project's eligible. He agreed that he felt, that it kind of fell into a gray area as well, and did not give me a definitive ruling one way or the other. And I think the thing I'll say about all three of these groups is none of them were paid to do an exhaustive, analysis of this, right? Like our attorney was paid to do that. So I think all of these opinions, just keep in mind, they're basing this off the information they have at hand, and none of them are, again, spending a lot of time on analyzing this because we're not paying them to do that, and sometimes they won't do it, like the DOR. So CPA Coalition, gray area, Department of Revenue, gray area. I reached out to CBiz, who is our audit firm, and Tanya Campbell, who's audited the town for a while. And I gave her both the legal opinion from KP Law, and I gave her the legal opinion from Anderson Krieger, I think, and asked again, sort of the same thing, like, would you view this as supplanting? And her response was that she agreed, again, based on the information available, with KP Law and their opinion. So I would say not overwhelming for or against, but I'd say 2 said gray area and 1 said that they agreed with KP Law's assessment.
So just for Tom's benefit, because he wasn't here last time, we pulled this project out of the larger list for the Community Preservation Act Committee, and we voted on the list except for the Jones Library, thinking of it's just pulled out, to come back and vote separately on it, but first with the information we just had. So right now, we have a financial order that's going to need to be changed anyway, because the dollar sign went down for the Jones Library because some of the work has already been done. So they had it, the request was listed as 440 and it's now 330. But think of the larger order as minus that line for the time being. So we're at a point of taking a vote, having got this information on the Jones Library piece of CPA, and I'm going to open it up first for any discussion. And then I want to just go immediately to a vote. Sam, and I see Sam, Tom, and Anna's hands are up.
Thank you, Kathy. Sean, I just wanted to follow up with a question. I heard you indicate that you spoke to the 3, and the first one being Stuart Saginaw CPA. And if I understood correctly, you're indicating that he said it was not legally an issue, but he felt that it was sort of against the spirit of the
Yeah, let me
CPA.
reframe that. He said he could see arguments for and against it, for it being supplanting and for why it wouldn't be supplanting, and that technically it may fall into a gray area, and that from a spirit of the law perspective, he did not agree with it,
And in that, and what you
or did not
explained,
support it. Sorry.
and what you explained to him was the question of the entire project versus the scope of the CPA request. Is that correct? In other words, the fact that there's a larger library project that's been ongoing for many years, whereas this
Yeah,
request is for a component of it. Is that in essence, or maybe I'm asking too many details? I'm not.
no, I mean, it's
Really-
again, this is where, again, hasn't done a full analysis of the project. I think he's aware of this project, 'cause I'm sure he's aware of these, that especially the ones that are not straightforward. So I gave, we talked about the orders, the financial orders that have been approved, and how this, request basically interacts with those financial orders that have been approved. Because I think that's the key to the supplanting question is we have an appropriation and then a following appropriation, and then we have this request that's related to that appropriation request.
Okay.
Tom and then Anna.
Thanks, Kathy, and thank you for the recap you gave me. I appreciate it. I wasn't at the last meeting, although I did follow up to watch the conversation. I'm interested in it. I'll remind committee members, I also serve as the treasurer to the Friends of Jones Library, so I'm familiar with the financials of the organization and the project, like you are. So from that perspective, I tend to feel this is kind of a cut and dried proposition. I know you've got a lot of input and opinions that Sean's walked us through. Primarily the KP Law one is what I focus on, but I went back and I took a look at and there's a raft of materials. So, but I'm reviewed something called a memorandum of agreement among the Massachusetts Historical Commission, Town of Amherst, and Jones Library regarding the Jones Library renovation and expansion project, which appears to have been completed maybe in 2025, although it looks like it was a 2-year process at least, which is fairly recent history in the context of this project. And it looks to me as though that under this process that was negotiated, it's actually the library is required to go through exactly the process it did in terms of raising this preservation or submitting a proposal for consideration under the CPA grants. So it seems like the library had done its part, and to me that the law firm feels that the CPA has followed the law and the spirit to do its part. And so I feel, again, the library's been conscientious and diligent and open about the application, including the reduction to reflect a reduced balance of payments and so forth. So I look at it and feel it's not ought to be a referendum on the library project, but more as Kent said, but more a question of whether the council chooses to support the work of the CPA, which is the organization that is best placed to make this kind of judgment or recommendation and has. I hope that the council will do its part and support the recommendation. And I understand, if I understand correctly, that we're going to vote specifically just on this one project, and whether either we're voting on it as a standalone or voting on whether to reintegrate it, Kathy, with the basket that it came from.
Well, that's, as I write the report up, Tom,
Right.
so if the vote is to support the project, then whether it's, unanimous or not, if that's the vote, then our recommendation to the council would be to support it as presented, which would include the line, except for the change in the number. But we would be reporting that we went through this process. If the vote were to not support it, then we would be recommending that the council look at a CPA order without Jones in it or one with Jones in it and make their own decision. We pulled it out so no one would be in a position of voting down the whole package just because they had concerns about one of the issues. So Athena's raising her hand on whether I've said something we can't do procedurally. Go ahead, Athena.
No, I just wanted to share that we just had our agenda setting meeting before this meeting, and the the plan for the agenda, because Finance Committee already is taking this aside from the rest of the CPA appropriations, will be to ask the council to divide the Jones CPA appropriation in consent and then approve so that they could be voted. Jones can be taken up separately.
Okay, so we can, you can look at the wording of whatever I say, because the way I had drafted it is that it advising the council also to look at it separately again. So if anyone was not wanting to vote for this project, they wouldn't be voting down the other 10. So it sounds like you're setting up the motion to be able to do that. So Tom, if we can vote out what we find, but then we can also have a recommendation that the council do what it sounds like Athena has said they're already planning on doing with the motions.
I see.
Is that clear? You know, and
Yes.
you know, it was to guard against, we've had this in my time on the council, which is the entire council. There was one other project that, because there were questions about it, it was separated off to the right to an end. So it didn't tie up the approval of the other projects because they all get a notice that it's been approved from CPAC. So that, does that answer your question?
Yeah, yes, it does. And I appreciate it. Thank you, Kathy. And thank you, Athena.
And Lynn, I saw your hand up.
Actually, you saw Anna's hand up.
Oh, Anna's hand was up before, but now there are no hands up.
was.
Okay, Anna.
I think I managed to answer my own question. Thank you.
Okay, I do have a question though. So
Okay.
what I'm hearing from quote the people that talk about the spirit of the law is that if they were going to apply for this, they should have applied for it earlier, not later. Is that an interpretation that we can take away from this?
I wouldn't say that's Stewart's interpretation. It might be others. I've just
That is Stewart's interpretation.
N-
Because to
I
avoid
no, I
supplanting,
wouldn't characterize Stewart's I guess I don't feel like I have enough information from Stewart to determine if that's his the sense I got was the fact that this project is that this component of the work would be complete either way, was why he felt that. But now I'm making a judgment call on somebody else's feeling about it.
I have another question, but go to Anna, please.
Anna,
Well, it's related to that because my initial question was kind of we've been hearing a lot of this is going to happen either way, and I presume that's because this is in the contract with Fontaine Brothers and that contract's been signed. So I think that if I'm understanding Lynn's question, that's where this is arising from. And Lynn, what you're asking is if we had signed it before that, if they had requested CPA funds before that contract were signed, then there wasn't a guarantee that this work would be done regardless. Is that what you're saying? Because that phrasing of it's going to happen no matter what seems to be kind of what a lot of folks are hinging on. And I believe that phrasing is coming from the fact that there's a signed contract. This is really a matter of, will the funding for that work be for the historic preservation part of that work specifically be pulled from CPA, or will the library be responsible for fundraising it from other sources other than CPA, which is not part of the town's contribution that the council discussed? It was a word salad a little bit, but I think that was where my trip up was happening, was we keep using this phrase of it's going to happen regardless. And I'm just confirming that that's because the historic preservation is outlined in the contract. Is that right? I don't know if that was a comment or a statement, but Lynn, I think I'm kind of trying to further what you were saying or rephrase.
so Anna, I'll just jump in but I see Kathleen, I think it's because the project is funded. Yes, we know, there's a share that is going to be owed back to the town. But the whole project, the town is actually taken out debt already to fund.
Oh, I understand.
So it's not just in the construction contract, but it's in a funded construction contract. And so most of the CPA projects, at least the times I've seen them, have come in at the beginning when the fundraising is looking, like the first Jones Library one was to secure the money so they could make a good case to other funders that the project was financially viable. So we funded some to secure a state grant. You know, we've done seed money and CPAC, but then brought in other money. So I don't think I've seen any other project where the town had already taken out the debt for it. Well, it's an unusual project, let me put it that way, you know, because we usually don't take on this much for a building we don't own. You know, so we don't have anything that's I think the equivalent of it. You know, it would be if we had completely funded the school, taken the vote on the school, I think we could not have come back to CPAC for the $700,000 for the fields, because the town was responsible for it, and that would have been supplanting taxpayer money that we had just voted through. But that was an all-town project. So that was part of this when Sean went out and showed taxpayer the CPAC money had already been committed to if the project went through. So again, it was at the beginning of the project, so it lowered the expense, the tax side, out of the general fund. So that's the gray area here because it's unusual. So Kathleen has her hand up.
Yeah, I just have a sort of a general question for the group. Just those of you who have followed the CPA process for longer than I have in general, like, how common is it for a project to get to this stage where there is still some lingering question about gray area where the CPA coalition and DOR are both indicating, you know, it's not maybe 100% cut and dry. I'm just curious if this kind of issue has come before finance and get onto this stage with that level of uncertainty still around it.
I can speak to that a little bit. Oh, Sean would be
No,
much
go.
better.
Well, unless you feel differently, I was going to say not common.
I was going to say not common, but it does happen in terms of the gray area, especially because a major utilizer is not the right word, but the town comes to CPA often for projects. And so I think that, which is perfectly legitimate and a very valid use of CPA funding. Kathleen, when I was on the CPA committee, and I know Sam served on it for longer than I did, but when I was on there, we did navigate this question a decent amount, and I asked it when I was on CPA pretty directly about a couple projects. And in each of those instances, including the first Jones, or the second, I think it was the second technically, Jones request that came through, which was when I was on CPA, they were both determined to not be supplanting in those instances, but every case is slightly different. So I would say it's not super common, but it does happen. Those questions are raised when projects, especially from the town, come through.
Thank you.
Sam?
Thank you, Kathy. In response to the question from Kathleen, during my time, 6 years, it's not common. There certainly, while I was chair, proactive attempts made to, clarify any details and questions at the CPA committee level. It has occurred in the past. In fact, there were questions with the first Jones Library application for a sum of about $1 million. It wasn't necessarily that supplanting was the question. There were a variety of issues, and then there was a request to rescind and then rewrite it. But it's not frequent. Usually it's raised, but even when issues are raised, there are differing opinions from members of the CPA committee during my time period regarding whether or not members wanted to support a particular project. And sometimes they would reference aspects of they don't think it's an appropriate usage. That's, from my perspective, that's part of the uh, process of having 9 members on a committee to seek to prioritize uh, funds for projects that come before them. So, for me, what I'm seeing here is a question that may relate to, do finance committee and or town council consider the project to be one that they wish to support and why? Uh, But we also receive legal opinion from the town council, meaning lawyer, that it's not a supplanting issue. So that's my long-winded response to your inquiry. It does happen, and members of CPA committees and during my time would have varying questions, and sometimes that those questions would persist after seeking out similar information to what Sean reached out with today. So that's,
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Lynn,
This is really a question for Paul and Sean. I don't know if Paul's actively able to participate. Do you feel that our passage of this would leave the town open to a legal question?
I will say yes. I mean, I think it could have no matter what. Paul, if you feel differently, let me know.
Yeah, I mean, anything the town does is subject to anybody litigating about anything, just, but in terms of whether it's defensible, I feel very strongly that the town's attorney has rendered an opinion that is what we usually rely on when we're making legal decisions, making financing decisions. So the fact that we have a legal opinion from our town attorney gives me comfort.
Okay, thank you.
so are there any other comments before I make a motion to vote? I don't see any hands up. So let me think of how I word this motion. This is a motion to that the Finance Committee recommend that the Jones Library project be included in financial order. Let me just get the financial order number. Sorry.
Your motion is to recommend approval of the financial order, correct?
Yes.
Is that what you're?
Well, yes, but I'm just, yeah, but it's, in the past, Athena, you asked me to use the word adopt, but yes, recommend approval of financial order FY 27-07A, including the Jones Library, with the numbers adjusted based on the recent change in the Jones Library request. So it's basically, so I'm not, I mean, I'm going to reword my motion because we're trying to make it a separate motion. The motion is to include the Jones Library project in the CPA Community Preservation Act budget, that the council approve adding the Jones Library project as part of the CPA order and appropriation. And so a yes would be, yes, leave it in the package, and no would be, no, do not. And someone can suggest better wording for that. I'd be happy to.
I think it's just whether you recommend this project. I think you got to be clear whether. I think
Okay,
you could just vote to recommend the Jones Library project or
okay,
not
great.
recommend the Jones Library project, and
Okay,
then we can.
To recommend approval of the Jones Library project portion of FY 2707A
Yep.
in the amount of 330,000.
In the amount of 330,000. So did everyone get my incoherent motion edited down. So it's you basically you're voting
If-
on yes or no for the Jones Library project in the sum of $330,000.
Seconded. If I'm
Second.
understanding the language that Athena said and then Kathy
can-
summarized is the motion.
And Athena can show it on a screen just so
I
we
can
That would be
repeat it.
great. Thank you.
Okay, so does everyone understand what we're voting on? Sam?
So you retracted your initial motion and came
Well,
up with a new
we're
one, is that
voting,
correct?
we're basically voting on, to recommend that the council approve the Jones Library project at a sum of $330,000 as part of the Community Preservation Act funds. And Athena will put that up on the screen. So I'm not going to refer back to the financial order because it doesn't even have that number in it. So it's a separate vote just on the Jones Library. And let's just see if we can. Okay. So this.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah.
Well, short and sweet is good.
Okay, is everyone clear on what we're voting on? A yes means yes, recommend approval, and a no means no. And an abstain would be you haven't made up your mind. Sam?
Thank you, Kathy. Do we always use the word recommend as opposed to support?
Yes, we always, because we're recommending an action to the council. So almost every one of our all of our motions are, the committee is recommending that the council, and it should say recommend that the council approve.
Thank you. I asked that just because I recognize that
Thank you. There we go.
I recognize that 13 council members will have their own
So, no,
opinions.
okay,
An
thank you. And
individual.
absolutely, you fixed the wording. Thank you. So we now
Okay.
have,
And Anna had seconded that. Anna, are you okay with this language? Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
all right, then if you take it down, then I'm going to be able to see the screen with everyone as opposed to, okay, I am, since I don't have people written out alphabetically, I'm just going to go to, yes, Sam, you have a question?
Have we completed discussion on this?
Well, I asked if anyone had anything more they wanted to discuss and no one raised their hand, so I think yes.
Just related to the motion discussion, I plan to support the Jones Library proposal based upon the based upon the CPA committee process. And separate from that, I would comment that councils can, make their own determinations, but I plan to support it and therefore will support the motion based on that. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go across the screen with the faces as I see them. Lynn,
Pass.
so you're passing, is that?
That's not an option, Lynn. Are you
Okay,
abstaining?
I think there's a yes, no, and an abstain vote.
Yeah.
Are you saying you want me to come back to you at the end? Okay. Tom Port, and for the resident members, it's a support, not support, or abstain. You get the same three choices. Tom?
I'm going to support, although I'm going to say, I'm not sure abstain works like recusal, but I do want to say, to avoid any appearance of conflict, I am an interested party to the extent that I'm serving in a financial treasury role on the Friends of the Jones Library, and I would not want to for that to be an issue.
Okay,
But
so
I am a non-voter, so maybe that's moot.
okay. Anna,
I'm so tempted to pass, Kathy, but I won't do that to you. Aye.
Sam,
I'll vote aye.
Kathy is a no. Kathleen,
I do not support.
and now I think you're the last person, Lynn.
I'm going to abstain because I want to think about this issue. Very
So,
rarely do I use that option, but I want to think about it.
So the
so,
motion passes 2-1 with one abstention, one member in support, and one member not in support. That's what will go to the council.
so you're saying this abstention doesn't count in the group, the people who are voting? It's a financial order, Athena. I think all
It's
our votes
two.
count.
Yeah, that's what I said. Two in favor, one opposed, one abstention,
But
one
it's not,
non-voter.
but it's not a majority of the people voting. And I think it has to be on a financial order. I mean, it has to be the abstention has to count as a negative, I think.
Then I will vote yes.
Can I ask a point of order?
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I'm fine. I'll report it out the way this is, and someone else can tell me whether I'll just report it out that the vote was 2 yeses, 1 no, 1 abstain, 1 support, 1 not support, and 2 people absent. That's the way I'll report it out.
I still have my point of order question.
Okay.
So if our motion is to recommend the council do something about a financial order, are we still held to the same vote quantum as a financial order vote itself?
No,
Okay, so it's a simple majority.
correct.
Okay, thank you. Of
And
those present and voting.
well, that's my question is, does the abstain vote mean that the person didn't vote on a, so that was my question. There were 4 of us here.
Right.
And there were
An
2.
abstain is not, it's essentially not participating in the vote. So an abstention, it's not included in the vote total in the same way. So the vote was 2-1. One person did not vote.
Thank you for
And
clarifying that.
2-1 passes.
And I will check that later, Anna, but I'm fine reporting it out this way because I think on financial orders, you can't just basically not vote, but it's fine. And Lynn said if her vote didn't count and therefore it was tied, she would switch it to a yes. So we know where Lynn was, it
That's
would be,
fine,
yeah,
Kathy, but this wasn't a vote on a financial order. It was a vote on a recommendation.
yeah, I got it.
Okay.
And I
So-
would like the record to show that I'm totally in support of this. My only question is the legal issue.
Yeah. Okay. Legal issue. So I will draft what we just did now. And it's clear that some of the yeses were strongly both the legal opinion, the noes, I stated why I'm a no. So, and I will send it to everyone to make sure I characterize this. So the end is the finance committee had a split vote, but basically the majority of those voting were in support of approving it. And then it gets, but everyone who is a counselor, we get to vote on it again when it comes up. Sam?
Yeah, just to hone in on this point, Anna brought it up and I think you addressed it, but the finance committee's quote unquote recommendation, even if it were against the motion, would still go to town council for a vote on the matter, correct?
Yeah,
So that
exactly.
it's not a veto of the process, for lack of a better term. It's a commentary on whether or not we support it, essentially. And that's what I was getting at with my commentary regarding support versus recommend. So
That's
thank you.
correct, Sam. And it just, if anyone looks at the finance committee report on the budget last year, 2 people were not in support of a very long budget report for totally different reasons. And so it was 3-2. And but again, that didn't affect the later one. So I think we're done with that. Now we have, it's 2:23. We have another financial order. And it is the regional school debt. And we didn't have the order itself in the packet. Sean has an order though, but we had the certification of the debt that came to us from the regional school. We had the letter. And I will explain what this is, and Sean can correct me if I don't get it entirely right. We get a letter from the regional school treasurer that represents the final vote of the regional school committee on capital for the year. And the region finances all its capital with debt. So this becomes a debt authorization. We get language that says, here's the Amherst share, and it shows our share of the various projects. And it was in the packet. It's a longer paragraph. We turn that into a financial order. If we do not act, meaning finance and the council, in 60 days, this happens unless one of the towns disapproves of the order. So what we have done in the past, since I've been on the council, is vote affirmatively for it if we're for it, rather than just letting the clock tick for 60 days. So if we do nothing at all for 60 days, this becomes a debt authorization and it gets certified. So any questions about this? It goes into our capital budget, and we're not voting on the individual items at all in finance. We're voting on whether or not to recommend the request for $497,000, and that's debt authorization, so it's debt service.
Kathy, can I make one clarification?
Yes, yeah.
So the information we get from the regional treasurer on our debt assessment, that is for actual debt, and that is just our share. This order is authorizing new debt, and this is not just our share. This is the total amount that will be authorized.
Okay.
And then eventually they'll do these projects. They might be next year. They might be
Okay, thank
years
you.
down the road. And then we'll pay the debt assessment as it comes in. So this is the total costs of their authorization.
So this is not just, I wasn't sure. So this is not just the Amherst share.
No, this is the total debt authorization. So we have to, well, we don't have to, but they have to get the full amount of their authorization approved, or request that it's acted on, and it doesn't have to be acted on.
Okay, so I misspoke completely on that. And we separately, I think everyone knows, we voted several months ago on the roof, on debt for the middle school roof. And so that's not showing up in this list because it was a separate vote. Is that correct, Sean?
Right. And that wasn't debt. That was free cash, a free cash appropriation. Yep. So
But that was for the auditorium, but we earlier did the whole, okay.
Yep.
There isn't it. So this is the total amount, and we don't get told at this point what the Amherst share of that is?
No, I mean, we're roughly 80%
roughly
of
70,
it.
it's 80% of it, yeah.
So these are budgets, right? So the final cost for these projects may come in lower. And since it's a borrowing, they're gonna have an interest rate that they don't know what that is yet. So we don't know. They can project what our share will be, but they don't have an exact amount yet because they haven't actually borrowed for it. But we will be roughly 80% of this plus whatever interest costs they have.
Thank you. So now questions, since Kathy didn't even describe it correctly. Kathleen.
I just have a question about the other towns and their share. And so if Amherst will approve this as part of the capital debt authorization, is it if the other towns are approving the similar during their town meetings so that they're similarly obligated then to their
Yeah.
share?
So they have historically, and maybe this has changed. They have historically decided to take no vote, or mostly that's my experience, which is going back a little ways. They've taken no vote, and a no vote is approving. So basically, from the time the school committee votes it, the towns have 60 days to act on it, and if they don't act, it's considered approval. And so a lot of the smaller towns just don't put it doesn't appear on their town meeting. They don't even act on it. It just passes. I think maybe some towns have started to put it on there, but at least when I was there, many of them just didn't vote on it.
Thank you.
Any questions on this? And then the motion, our action would be having gotten a clearer explanation of what we're voting on, would be that we recommend that the council adopt or approval order FY 2703A, the capital debt authorization in the amount of $497,000. And I would be writing a note, which was what we did last year, that although we don't have to vote on it, we're recommending that the council take a vote on it to approve it. So we could say, just let the clock run out. So that's the other option we have on this, a do nothing vote. Lynn?
Are you making that motion, Kathy?
Yeah, I'm just saying I can make that motion,
Oh.
or we could decide not to take an action on it. So I will make the motion if everyone agrees we want to make the motion.
I
Lynn?
want to second the motion because I think we should in fact act on these. Thank you.
Okay. So yes, so I am making that motion.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other discussion on this? All right, then I will put it to a vote. A yes is that we're recommending that the council, and you just pulled it down, so I can't see the number, but
Hold on, I'll put it back up. Hold on.
I got this, just so people know, I got this about 45 minutes before we met too, so I don't have it printed out.
It's 497.
So this is what we were originally sent, and it's in
Yeah.
our packet, and then,
Yeah. 497,000.
yeah. So I am putting it to a vote, and I will get the financial order number correct in it. Kathy is a yes. Lynn?
Aye.
Sam?
Aye.
Okay. Anna?
Aye.
Kathleen?
Support.
And Tom?
I support.
Okay, so that's unanimous. And I am including this in our report, and I'm not sure, Athena, whether it's going to come up at the council meeting on Monday, but I will get it to you in case you want to have it come up.
Yes, it is on the agenda for Monday.
Okay, so lastly, I am conscious of the time, so rather than go over questions, Lynn did submit questions on education for the first part of the budget session, since it comes up the first week in May, and we were trying to get things in advance. And people, I wrote everyone this, but people have raised their hands for which sections they want to do. So just to remind people, right now there are 3 people, and I think that's fine on the DPW and enterprise funds, because it's going to be a complicated section. Particularly, it's going to have water and sewer rates in it. And that's Tom Porter, Kathleen Mitchell, and Joe all said they wanted to work on that. And Kathleen offered to switch to something else, but when you take on a section, you're also going to have to write the section for the report. So I think three on a pretty big part of what was a big part of the report makes sense. Anna and Jill both said yes to public safety, and that's police, fire, and CRES. Sam, general government and debt. Sam, you're on that one. And to the extent people, and Lynn has education, I took the first day, which is an introduction to the whole budget and the capital improvement plan, and I'll do the library. And Lynn's willing to do the community services part of the day that the library is on. So we've covered all the different sections. What that means is once we get the budget, which will be with us on May 1st, and Sean will let us all know that it's been posted, or Paul will let us know that it's been posted, and the electronic copy will be available. We draft questions that go beyond what you can just get in the budget or budget from the budget document, or we've gathered along to get to the people who are going to be representing those departments in advance. So the more we can get it in advance, the better for the discussion, because the discussion will focus on the questions. And I will, if everyone's comfortable with this, as Lynn did, she put out a call to all the other counselors who aren't on the finance committee, if anyone had any questions on Education to send them to her. I'll do that as chair, just any section, and then make sure they get routed to the person or people who are in charge. Because ideally, we would put them in one document rather than having them coming from different people. We also had the option, and Athena, I don't remember how we handled it last time. If there are counselors who would like to participate, we can make it a joint finance and town council meeting. And we switch the Thursday meetings to be a later hour to make that more possible. And Athena, I don't know when or how we figured out which meetings had more people wanting to come. Sean, go ahead.
Kathy, did we, I think one thing I was hoping to get clarity, are we moving the Thursday meetings to 3:30 or keeping them at 3?
Jill requested that, and right now, Lynn, education is still starting at 3 because the superintendent has to leave. So that one's still, so, is everyone okay with the other Thursday meeting starting at 3:30? It looks like yes.
Okay, I'll work with Athena to adjust those invites and postings.
So those are those Thursday afternoon meetings, which is the public safety and the DPW and enterprise funds. We deliberately put them on Thursdays, or Sean deliberately put them on Thursdays to enable if other council members wanted to actually physically be there, and we were conflicting with one other committee meeting. But Athena, do you remember how we made a decision whether or not to post it as joint?
So in the past few years, we haven't posted the Finance Committee budget review meetings as joint meetings. Counselors can attend the meetings in the audience and make public comment, but we
Okay.
didn't post them as joint meetings. We were planning on posting the budget hearing as a joint meeting with the council, so counselors can,
Okay.
appear present and so on. But we haven't had any requests for those meetings to be published as joint meetings so that counselors can fully participate.
Okay, Anna?
Is there a harm to making them full meetings and then not calling them if not enough counselors show up? I think that's my only worry is I think it's challenging to, get questions asked of us as finance committee members through email where there might be follow-ups or further questions from other counselors and not be able to really accurately represent those questions. And I know that the budget hearing is obviously very different than these meetings. So is there a problem with posting it as a joint meeting so that there is the opportunity?
I can check with the president and see if she wants to post them as joint meetings. It's up to her to determine the council agenda. So I'd have to check with her.
And then we could, we don't have to make that decision right now, Anna, but my understanding is one of the challenges was if you post them on joint, then it's as if a council meeting occurred and what are the minutes like? But if you don't get any more than one other person, as soon as 2 appear, it becomes a council meeting, and otherwise everyone knows we're leaving the other councilors basically in the audience. They have up to 3 minutes to say something. So clearly everyone will have their turn to talk when the whole budget comes back to the council. So those are the assignments, and yes, Sam.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm wondering, this is a process I assume that the Finance Committee has gone through every year. Is there listings of the questions that have been asked in the past, or would that just be seen by going and watching the videos? There are changes every cycle, but I'm sure there's.
So I'm going to give you a partial yes, Sam. So I know in the year I can probably find the set of questions, particularly for your area, that were asked, but very often people really waited to see the budget book. And with the budget book, if you look at our budget books, they have challenges, aspirations, and pieces. So for your area, my memory, it's the general budget. There were things like, and as an example, the benefits line, employee benefits line pensions, if that's part of general budget, has a portion of it that for teachers, non-teachers in the school system. So a question was how much of that line is basically schools, but it shows up in the general fund, not in the school budget. But I can find the questions from the past. And Kathleen, you told me, I think in an email, that you were able to find some of the questions that were asked in the past for DPW and the enterprise funds. And part
Yeah,
of
I think I saw the questions, but also the recordings of last year's meetings are very helpful because I think at least DPW, they went through the written questions, and then there was a lot of discussion. So I think my experience in trying to get caught up is that last year's budget meeting on that topic is very helpful.
so Sam, I can definitely tell you which time your section was last time, without you having to search for it.
Well, that's fine. I can look anyway. It just seems that prompting one's thought process is never a negative. So,
No, and the other thing is that you can come up with a very short list. It's not like and others will. I'm going to be sending questions in to various people. You can come up for a short list. And Lynn, I see your hand is up, so I'll stop talking on this. But yeah,
So I want to make sure I understand, Kathy, because I actually solicited questions from the full council. Are you going to solicit questions from the full council on behalf of all of the sections? Or are we going to do that separately?
I think it would be best if I solicited them on behalf of everyone in all the sections, and then I send the questions out, because if each of you says, I'm DPW and enterprise funds, and the Quinn goes out to the other counselors, there is one counselor who usually reads when the budget arrives, goes through it with a fine-tooth comb and has questions on every section. But that's not true of everybody, so it's going to depend. It's going to depend on what people focus on. But Lynn, I think that would just make it easier, and I'll announce that on Monday night. That just get and also the questions will both go back to the respective people, but make sure that Sean is the central coordinator here.
Right. I mean, because actually, when you go through the questions, it's important to condense and modify or whatever. Second question is, I'm more than willing to have the questions that were sent to the schools posted, although Sean, you have the final items sent to the schools.
Yeah, so we shared it with the schools, and the superintendent asked, the format, and I said to give a 5 to 10 minute, presentation overview, and then to go through the questions, unless they have written responses to the questions ahead of time, in which case we would distribute those, back to the committee before the meeting. So either you'll get the questions at the meeting addressed, or if they're available ahead of time, we'll send them out to you.
Okay, and then the third thing is that really following up on what Sean said, periodically we've had people send their written responses to us even in advance. So some of those may be in the packet. Thank you.
And if people want, Lynn just offered, she can post what was sent to the schools. And Sam, that won't necessarily be a model for anything else. The schools is pretty complicated. And it largely focuses on the elementary school, but it has a few questions on regional.
Sean, did you change anything that went to the schools?
I don't believe so. I think Paul sent it directly to the superintendent, so I don't think anything was changed.
But just to make sure, why don't you be the one to post whatever you think was
Yeah,
sent?
yeah. If I get anything, do you want me just to post the question? Okay, so
Yes,
am
please
I hearing
do.
post the questions even without the responses? I can do that.
Yeah.
Yes, please do. Thank you.
Sam?
Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, it seems to me that your suggestion for sending it out to everybody and having the counselors email if they have questions seems to be the most efficient process. And in terms of counselor time and in terms of communications from you. So it makes sense to get the questions in advance from members, whether they be on the finance committee or whether they be on the overall town council. So I agree with your thought process.
Okay, so I will do that. The council meets on Monday night and I will announce that. And the schedule that you all saw that's in our packet for today, where the budget comes in on May 1st, but then when we're meeting on each, I will ask Athena to also post that. Well, I'm actually including it in the finance report, but so that the people know that if you want to ask questions on this, get them sooner rather than later because it's in the first week or the second week. So that is the process. And Sam, when you said the process has evolved over time, and I think for the last 3 years, maybe 4, we've done that if you're a lead, you're also drafting the section of the report. And that's helped. Then as chair and working with my vice chair, I pull everything together to make sure it's the same font, but do minor edits to make it work and do an executive summary, that everyone asked for an executive summary of any main issues that came up as we were talking through the budget that weren't specifically the whole budget. So trying to keep that executive summary short but say something has been a challenge. But so that and then in our schedule, I can't remember whether I noted this when I sent the schedule out. We're scheduled to have the last day to discuss the report be May 28th, that Thursday, but we technically have one more meeting if we can't get it done. So the Tuesday, June 2nd, we could finalize our report because we have 30 days from the time the town manager sends it from the time we receive it, and we won't be receiving it until the council sends it to us. So there's a little bit of leeway if some of the pieces of the report become more difficult to write, or to say what we want to say clearly. So Anna, I know Anna's already let me know that she's going to have to miss a few of the meetings. So Anna, I can't remember. I think the 28th was one of the days you wouldn't be there, but we'll get drafts out to you. So
Yeah, and if I'm splitting with Jill, she and I can talk and figure out a plan of attack ahead of time too. If she
okay,
and I are splitting that section, I think you had us both on there.
yep. So is there anything else? I'm not going to. I will get a draft of this report done by the end of my day today, which may be quite late. So you'll have it when you wake up in the morning. And what I'm doing in it is first Community Preservation Act and the process we went through, including the separate vote on Jones, then the regional school, then a brief description of the plan for review of the budget. So all that will be in this report. So people will have it on Monday. And I will give everyone till, if I can get it out to you tonight, tomorrow is Wednesday. If you could get me comments back by Thursday, I'll incorporate them. And then make sure that Athena gets this for posting on Thursday by the end of the day. I'm quick at incorporating, and I'll, as in the past, it can just be, it's fine, or this line's not clear, but the more you can be specific on what to change, the better. So with that said, I think we got through today. Is there any further comments before I make a motion to adjourn? Not seeing any, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Putting it to a vote. Lynn?
Aye.
Kathy's a yes. Tom?
Aye, aye.
Anna?
Aye.
Sam?
I
Kathleen?
Support.
And I think I got everyone. Paul and Sean don't have a say. So thank you all very much for what I thought was an excellent discussion. See
Thank you,
you.
Kathy.
Kathy.
Thank
See you in a couple
you.
weeks.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.